Hey, y'all, welcome to Coffee with Steven. Today we are going to do a book review. But before we jump into the book review, y'all, if you got coffee, drink some. Or if it's really hot, sip some first. So today we're going to do a book review on The Bone Shard Daughter. So this book is written by Andrea Stewart, and we're going to talk about it for just a little bit. But before we get into it, y'all, I'd like to ask you, if you are on X, if you would go to X and go and find at Coffee with, WIFME, at Coffee with Me, or you can search for Coffee with Steven. Give me a follow. I'll follow you back, and we can have some conversations on there, and I would really, really appreciate it. I also do my book reviews. I post them on here as well. So if you are on X again, give me a follow. I really would appreciate it. Now back to the book review, y'all. All right, so right off the bat, I told you in the introductory video, if you watch my introductory video, I'm doing book reviews specifically from a perspective of a guy like me. So after I read this book, would I recommend it to me again? So we're going to start out by saying, for this particular book right here, The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, no, I would not recommend it for me. And we'll get into reasons why. There's actually 3, maybe 4 reasons why. So we'll talk about it as we go. But let's kind of talk about The Bone Shard Daughter for a little bit. The story takes place in an empire of floating islands. So as the story goes along, it talks about the islands, and depending on the season, they kind of move a little bit. And we find out that the islands actually float because one of the islands at the very beginning of the book, called, I think it's Deerhead Island, it sinks. So we know that the islands float, and they also change position a little bit. So the further out in the empire that the islands are, they seem to move a little bit more. So the book is broken up into chapters, and the chapters are kind of done pretty neat, and I liked it. I'll tell you up front, I liked it. So if we look at the chapter like this one here, you see that it's labeled Lynn, which is a character, and then the island that Lynn is on. So Lynn happens to be on Imperial Island in the first chapter of the book. And all the way throughout the whole book, the chapters are named after the main characters in the book. So there are several characters in the book, and so it's the character name and then the island that they're on when it starts telling the story at that particular point in time. Really cool. I like the way they've done that because it kind of helps you keep up with who's being talked about or who's doing the talking in that part of the book. The first person introduced in the book is Lynn. Lynn is the Emperor's daughter, or so we're led to believe. We find out a little bit later in the book that maybe she's not the Emperor's daughter. Let me stop right there because I should have told you right from the beginning. There will be spoilers in this review. So if you're thinking about reading this book, there will be spoilers in this review. Lynn's story begins, much of her memory is gone. Her father tells her that she got some type of disease or a sickness, and she got it from a guy named Bayan, and Bayan appears to be the adopted son of the emperor. Lynn is the emperor's daughter, and you learn early in the book that Lynn is actually the Bone Shard Daughter. So when you're thinking about Lynn, the book's named after her. She is the Bone Shard Daughter. So bone shards, what is a bone shard? Well, bone shards are actually pieces of skull, and they're taking out with a chisel from small kids during these little festivals throughout the empire. The bone shards are actually used to control things called constructs. So constructs are these animals that are bits and pieces from different animals put together. They could be something besides animals put together. We'll get there. But anyway, so the bone shards are used to inscribe instructions and rules on. So you take the bone shards that come out of somebody's head, and you inscribe rules and things like that, and then they're put inside of these constructs. So the constructs have some rules and guidelines that they function with in society. In order to do that, you had to be able to stick your hand inside the body of the construct. So the emperor has the magic to do that with. He knows how to do it. And then Lynn and Bayan, they're trying to learn that magic from the emperor so that they can do it as well. All right, so let's talk about Lynn a little bit. So Lynn appears to be the Emperor's daughter, and we kind of discussed that already. She appears to be the Emperor's daughter, and I use appear specifically for a good reason because as the story goes on, you find out more about Lynn. But she has a large chunk of her memory that's missing. Lynn is focused on winning favor of her dad. So Lynn and Bayan are in like a little competition to see who can gather the most keys from the Emperor. The Emperor has keys to just about every room in the palace. Everything is locked up. And when they do something good or they achieve something, the Emperor will give them a key, which gives them access to rooms in the palace where they can learn more stuff. And the idea is they want to learn the magic and how to use bone shards and how to build constructs. Lynn eventually starts stealing keys from the Emperor, and she takes those keys that she steals, she takes them into a local town, and she found a blacksmith, and she gets the blacksmith to make a mold of them. The blacksmith makes the mold. She takes the original key, runs back to the palace, puts it back on the Emperor's key ring. Then she'll go back later to the blacksmith, and she'll get the key that he made from the mold so that she can actually go to the rooms and start using that key to get in. So she's really breaking into those rooms. She's doing it behind the Emperor's back. Right here, we're just going to take a little detour off of Lynn. We'll come back to Lynn. But as Lynn goes and she starts interacting with the blacksmith, he does other things besides keys, but she's just getting him to make keys. Well, after 2 or 3 visits to the blacksmith, one evening the blacksmith asks Lynn if she's hungry. And she's like, yeah, but I'll eat something when I get back to the palace. Well, he invites her to his house. So she goes back to the blacksmith's house. And when they go into the house, the first person she sees, it appears to be the grandmother or the mother of the blacksmith. Then it's the blacksmith's wife, their kids, and then it appears to be the blacksmith's brother, because the book references that the blacksmith and this man look almost identical, so it's his brother. And here comes the first part of the book that I truly, truly did not like. So then there's another man, and this man happens to be, maybe, the book says, it appears to be the husband of the blacksmith's brother. Why would you bring this up? Because, as you'll find out reading the book, they're not mentioned anymore. So the blacksmith's brother and the blacksmith's husband are not mentioned anymore, except for, in a little while, they all get killed. But they have no relevance to the story whatsoever. To me, it's like the author is just trying to normalize homosexuality by bringing it up in the book. It had no purpose being in there whatsoever. So, I didn't like that, and that kind of threw the whole book off for me. But there's another set of people like that in the book we'll talk about in a little bit. As Lynn starts getting these keys, she's teaching herself how to build constructs, she's more working on altering the bone shards. So she's working on taking the bone shards out of the constructs, changing what they say so that they do different things or they obey her instead of someone else. She spends a lot of time doing that. As she progresses with this, she starts out with small constructs like spies. The spies are just really small constructs with very limited direction. They listen for information and carry it back to a bigger construct, a more complicated construct. And then she starts moving on to the more complicated constructs as she gets better with it. During this process, she goes and she's trying to take control of one of the most complicated constructs, and she fails. Her directions on the bone shards don't seem to work. The construct starts falling apart, and the construct actually tells her father knows exactly what she's been doing over time. He knows that she's been stealing his keys and going to the blacksmith to get them made. He knows that she's been sneaking into rooms and learning this stuff all on her own. So she starts to panic. So she goes back and she runs back to the city, and she tries to warn the blacksmith and the blacksmith's family. Well, they try to escape. During the process of trying to escape, the Emperor is already aware of it, and he has them all killed. So they're all killed. He takes Lynn back to the palace. She's unconscious, and he locks her in her room. So while being locked in the room, Lynn and the Emperor have a conversation, and they're not seeing eye to eye at all. She wants to know, why did you do it? And he basically says, hey, they were committing treason against the empire, and they were doing something behind the Emperor's back. Well, she kind of became fond of them and did not appreciate it whatsoever. So Lynn decided, you know what, it's time for me to try to overthrow the Emperor. So she sets out on a path of trying to overthrow the Emperor. So she gets Bayan and some of the other constructs that she's already turned, and she uses them. And a long story short, they go and they have a battle with the Emperor and some of his constructs and some of their constructs. So in the process of the battle, Lin and Bayan are continuously trying to turn some constructs that come in to help the Emperor, and he's trying to do the same thing back. At the end of the day, Bayan dies. He gets killed, and then the Emperor gets killed. So now Lin becomes the Emperor. So getting close to the end of the book, you find out that Lin is now the Emperor. So now we're going to jump backwards, and we're going to talk about another character for a little bit. So another one of the main characters in the book is a guy named Jovis. Jovis is a smuggler. Jovis had a girlfriend / his love of his life. Her name was Amala, and Jovis spends most of his time trying to find Amala. Something happened to her. He goes to see Amala one evening, and she's not there. There's just 17 pieces of silver. I think it was 17 pieces of silver on her bed. So it looks like somebody just, said, hey, I took Amala. Here's money for Amala. And that was that. And years go by, and he can't find her. The only thing that he knows is somebody said they saw a dark boat with blue sails about the time that this happened. So he spends a lot of time looking for that dark boat with blue sails on it. So Jovis is on Deerhead Island when Deerhead Island starts to sink. He's there at one of the festivals, and he's trying to save one of the kids from having their bone shard taken out of their head. So he actually rescues the kid, gets in a fight with a lot of the Imperial guards. He gets injured quite a bit, and as the island is sinking, they get away, they get back to his boat, and they start sailing off. While they're sailing off, he notices in the water an animal that looks like a little cat, and he rescues that animal, and that animal is a strange-looking creature as the story goes on. It starts growing, and it has strange features about it. It's definitely not a cat. Well, they named this animal Melfi. So Melfi is kind of an attachment to Jovis for the rest of the story in the book. Like I said, Jovis got hurt battling the guards. Well, he noticed after saving Melfi that he started healing faster. And then as the story progresses, he starts getting like really super strength at certain times in the story. And he comes to realize that this is all coming from Melfi. So they have a bond together where Melfi helps him heal faster and also gives him super strength. So it's about halfway through the book. So somewhere around page 200, a little around 200 in the book. Well, some of the main characters actually start meeting each other, with one exception. We'll talk about the exception. Jovis actually goes to an island called Nifilanu Island, and he meets someone there named Ronami. So Ronami is another one of the main characters, and we'll talk a little bit about Ronami in a few minutes. So Jovis meets Ronami. Ronami is part of a resistance group called the Shardless Few. Shardless, like shards in your head, the bone shards that come out. They're called the Shardless Few. And they are trying to overthrow the governor on this island, the island of Nifilanu. As he starts working with her, he really doesn't want to help, but she talks him into helping because she'll give him information on this boat that he's looking for if he helps them overthrow or do some task. And he actually helps them out. They overthrow the governor, and then she gives him the information, and he kind of realizes, you know what? It's been a while since I seen the love of my life. Maybe there's a little bit more I can do to help. Melfi, his pet, is really compassionate and wants to help, so he kind of talks Jovis into helping. And yes, when I say he talks Jovis into helping, Melfi has learned to talk over time. So Ronami wants Jovis to go to Imperial Island. Imperial Island is where Lin is. And remember, we kind of jumped ahead with Lin. Lin actually kills the Emperor, and Jovis doesn't know this because we haven't got to that point in time in Jovis' story. So Jovis sets sail to Imperial Island. His goal is to try to infiltrate the Empire somehow or another. So as he's going, he kind of comes up with a plan. Since they're looking for him because he's a smuggler, he's going to turn himself in, and maybe that way he can start getting to know the guards or something like that. So as he arrives to Imperial Island, he finds that things look really weird to him. He's going toward the palace, and as he's going to the palace, he sees this strange shape. And this strange shape is the one that he's seen before. It happens to be the strange shape of something that he saw on that boat with the blue sails. So he starts walking faster, trying to catch it. And he's hollering out at it, trying to get its attention, but that figure starts moving faster. So he starts running and chasing after it. Well, that figure starts running faster and gets away from him. They get to the palace wall, and that figure jumps over the wall. And as it's jumping over the wall, he notices that that figure has 4 arms. Kind of freaks him out a little bit. So Mephi and Hovis jump over the wall, and they finally catch up to that figure, and they start battling that figure. And that figure is a lot more powerful than Jovis is, but remember, Jovis has extra power from Mephi. So between the two of them, they beat that figure, and they take his weapons away from him and everything. And Jovis finally says, "Where is she? Where is she?" And the figure's like, "Who are you talking about?" And he says, "Like 7 years ago, you took my girlfriend and you left 17 silver coins." And that figure said, "That long ago, if that's the person from that long ago, she's dead by now." So that kind of cements it to Jovis that Amala is actually dead. Now, remember, Lyn has overthrown the emperor at the palace. Jovis is now at the palace at the time that this has just happened. He's walking through the palace, and all of a sudden, he runs into Lyn. Lyn says, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Well, I'm Jovis." And she recognizes the name Jovis, and they talk for a little bit. Long story short, they kind of bond together a little bit, and they look and they notice that Mephi, it belongs to Jovis, but Lyn has a creature that she rescued from her father's lab that looks very, very similar to Mephi. So maybe they're kind of the same creature. We don't know yet, but that's what the story seems to tell us. They kind of compare stories and everything, and Lyn actually makes Jovis captain of the Imperial Guards at this point. And this is very close to the end of the story. So we're going to bounce back a little bit now, and we're going to talk about another main character in the book, and her name is Feilu. So Feilu is the governor's daughter of the island of Niflheinu. Remember, this is where Jovis was, where he met Rennami. Well, here's another thing in the story that you need to know if you are a guy like me, a conservative guy, and you don't like woke crap. So Feilu and Rennami are lesbians. They're kind of lovers together. As Feilu was growing up, she had a lot of freedoms from her father, who's the governor, and he's kind of one of these guys. He doesn't give back to his island at all. He takes all the money and he keeps it for himself. And as Feilu was growing up, she kind of learns to fight and spars with one of the guards. He teaches her on a regular basis how to fight. And as she's growing up, she also becomes known across the island as the girl who likes a lot of women. So she sleeps with a lot of different women on the island. And she does that until she runs into Rennami one day. And then she falls in love with Rennami. So we come to find out in this part of the story that Rennami belongs to a resistance group called the Shardless Few. So the Shardless Few and Rennami try to turn Feilu away from her father. And it's a struggle because Feilu kind of believes in what her father is doing. But as time passes on, they convince Feilu that it's time to get rid of her father and overthrow her father. So with the help of Jovis, the Shardless Few and Feilu actually overthrow her father. Feilu locks her father up in the dungeon, and then she takes control, or she becomes governor, but she does it with some help from Jovis. So Jovis kind of makes sure that she becomes governor, because there's another little side piece of the story going on that's not really important. At least it wasn't in this book anyway. All right, so now we have Feilu as the governor of this island. All right, and then we know that Jovis moves on, and he goes and he meets Lyn, who has become the emperor of the whole kingdom. Also, as the story is going on, kind of scattered 2 or 3 different places in the book, we meet another character named Sand. So Sand is a woman who is on this island. She doesn't know how she got there, but she's on the island with a bunch of other people who don't know how they got there. And they have these routines that they do every day. They don't ask why, they just know they're supposed to do this routine every day, and they all have something to do that kind of helps them contribute to the community. They do it day after day after day. Well, at some point, San climbs this mango tree and she falls. When she falls, a shard is knocked out of her arm, and she starts to remember a little bit. So as time goes on, she remembers more and more, and she starts trying to talk to other people on the island, asking them, do you remember where you came from? Nobody does. So she starts pressing. They all say, we've always been here. Well, she keeps pressing, and she finally finds one that, oh, I do remember the boat with the blue sail. And so she does another, and oh, I remember the boat with the blue sail. So several of them actually gain parts of their memory back. They don't get it all back, but they all remember, the boat with the blue sail. Well, they decide that, okay, that boat with the blue sail is probably going to come back at some point, and they find this inlet to the island, and they set up a trap for that blue boat. So eventually the blue boat, the boat with the blue sail does come back. They cast nets, and they capture the, I want to say driver. They capture the captain of that boat, and the captain of that boat is just like the creature that Jovis killed back at the palace. It's got 4 arms, and it's kind of, weird looking and everything. And so they capture that person, and he really won't give them a lot of information, and they capture the boat. And so as this is happening, once the emperor is killed, a lot of the people start getting their memory back. So it's like everything was tied back to the emperor. So this lady named Sand, she realizes and she remembers that her name was actually Nisong in her previous life or previous memories. And so she started remembering more and more, and she was back in a palace at some point in her memories. Well, as the story progresses, we learn that Lin, remember Lin is the emperor's daughter, now the emperor, her mother's name was Nisong. Well, her mother died according to the emperor, and he could not save her. So we've got kind of a little conflicting story here. Nisong was supposed to be dead, but Nisong's also on this island. And then we also find out close to the end of the story that Lin and Bayan weren't actually people, that they were either constructed or grew by the emperor, and he was growing them possibly to have them be the emperor and Nisong again. So Lin was kind of grown to be Nisong, replacing her mother because it really wasn't her mother. And then Nisong is also on this island with memories of being back in the palace. So we've got kind of a weird thing going on here. And then Bayan was supposed to possibly be the emperor, but Bayan was killed. So we don't know what's going to happen to him. Now, this is where we get to another part of the story that I don't like. The story ends right there with us finding out all those pieces of information, and with Sand saying, it's time for us to build an army. And that's it. The book is done. Now, I will admit, I knew walking into this that this was book 1 of a trilogy. Now, I expected the book to come to a good end, so if I didn't want to read the other 2 books, I would have a good full story. So the story is not over with, and I don't know what's going to happen, but what I do know is I'm not going to read the other 2 books. And I'm not going to read the other 2 books because of a few of the things I told you, the lesbian and the homosexual relationship that's going on in the story. And I don't like the way this story ended, leaving it like a cliffhanger from a TV series or something like that. If I wanted a cliffhanger, I would have bought a book that I knew that was going to do that with. So that really, really disappointed me. And then last but not least, let me share this bit of information with you. As I started reading the book, before I got too far in, I decided, you know what, let me see if the author of this book is on X. And if so, I'll share, I'll tag her in a post saying that, hey, I got this book, I'm going to read it, and, give a little, to kind of help promote it a little bit. Well, I found the author, and the last post that the author had was November 12th of 2024. And basically, what you read into it is she decided to get off X because she didn't like all the political hoorahing for Trump being in there. It offended her. And then I went back at a couple other posts, and she's re-quoting a whole lot of stuff about transgender people, kind of promoting transgenderism and everything. And that's just not my jibe. So I think if you're going to be on a platform and you're trying to sell books, you probably don't want to alienate half of your potential clientele. Her philosophy is definitely not my philosophy. Now, I'm not saying she can't have one. I'm all for people having their own thoughts and opinions and their own beliefs. More power to you. I'm all for it. This is a free country, and you should. But when you say, I'm going to get off X because I don't like the people on here, y'all, that person was talking about me. So that was the biggest reason that I will not be reading the next two books. So like I said at the very beginning, would I recommend this book for somebody like me that's in their mid-50s, a conservative male? No, I absolutely would not. And that is my review of The Bone Shard Daughter. So if you've read it, let me know what you thought about it. If this review helped you making a decision, I'm glad it did. If you don't see things the same way I do, I understand. I completely do. And that's what's so great about us being different people. But until the next book review, y'all, thank you so much for joining me here. I really appreciate it. Y'all have a great one. Bye.